welcome to week one of a college football corner. I was hoping my man Randy was going to be able to make it with me tonight, but it doesn't look like it. So I got to fly solo tonight. So I hope you bear with me. I'm doing it all by myself, but I'll still I'll get things where I need them to be. So it's Friday night. It's 9:30. We've already had a few games in the books of yesterday, as well as books on games that are going on tonight. Big upset tonight with Virginia Tech taking down North Carolina. I don't know if that's a really big upset because I think a lot of people were expecting nice things out of Blacksburg with the Hokies, and they surely did not disappoint. I watched a lot of that first half of that game, and they were pretty dominant on the line of scrimmage, especially on offense. And there were times where the North Carolina offense looked pretty good, but they were not consistent. But they did lose quite a bit of talent to the NFL. So that's a tad bit understandable. Young guys trying to learn and get in there when there's much more experienced guys on the other side of the field. Now, I do believe North Carolina brought back their entire offensive line, if I heard that correctly. So that's a positive for them, but still, they got a long way to go to try to have a good season. I looked at their schedule a little bit, and depending on how they play moving forward and some of the teams they play between now and Miami. I think they got Miami, and Notre Dame back-to-back coming up in a few weeks. So we'll just see what happens with that. But if they can get into that Miami game with no more losses, they look pretty good. And we'll find out a lot about Miami tomorrow night when they play Alabama. So week one, we're here. Happy you're with me here. Give me a like on Facebook if you're watching on Facebook. And if you are on YouTube, subscribe and hit the bell so you can get what we're doing here on the mothership, as I call it, the Fletch Entertainment Network. So my name is Fletch, and I kind of run this whole thing here. And Randy's my compadre when it comes to the college football corner. And I do a lot of other things on here, too, so you can check out. I have my kids doing crazy stuff. I got 2 little girls. We got a lot of stuff going on, just trying to make it entertaining for everyone. So without further waste of time, let's take a quick look at what happened last night, Ohio State and Minnesota. Most of you, anybody that has watched this show knows that between Randy and myself, I'm an Ohio State fan. He's a Buckeye fan. I'm sorry, he's a Bama fan. I can't believe I said that. But the big thing with us is that we don't homer it up. We call it like what it is. And I can honestly say that that game went about as I was feared that would go. Do I want them to blow them out? Sure. Who doesn't want their team to blow somebody out? But I had my reservations about so many players not playing. I don't know how many people knew that both corners were the starting cornerbacks for Ohio State's defense weren't playing that game. So they had a true freshman playing on one side. The six of the 7 backfield on defense was all new. They also lost some good guys that they're trying to replace on defense. Togiai, a nice run stopper. Didn't see anybody last night that was replacing him. It's one game, but and that's one game against a team that I know a lot of people are panning Minnesota on social media. And social media is what it is. The reality is, last year was just an aberration of certain teams. I know Minnesota, I think they averaged 25 guys out every game with COVID last year. So you can take their record last year and just throw it in the trash. The year before that, they were 11-2. They didn't play seriously big-time opponents on their schedule, but they played really well, and they had some nice wins, one against Penn State for one. They came within one game of playing in the championship for the Big Ten, which is really big for Minnesota. So P.J. Fleck, as soon as they picked him up, I thought, he's going to turn that program around. I don't know what he's going to do with it. I'm not saying he's going to win a national championship, but he'll make them relevant in the Big Ten, and we'll see where he goes from there once he gets some nice wins, maybe a Big Ten championship, and then he can start getting some recruits. But he's a heck of a coach. He's got lower star players, and he's getting big things done with them. So they looked really good. So, Minnesota, they had a great running back. I really hated to see that guy. I think I kind of posted online. I think he tore his Achilles. I don't know if he did that or not, but it sure looked like it was Achilles. A lot of times when you outstretch that leg, it's like his did. It'll pop. And I swear when I saw the replay, I thought I saw it pop. So, it's just one of those things. But it is what it is. I think I saw Randy maybe call me, so maybe he can't get in. So as I'm talking to you, I'm going to flick onto Facebook and see if I can give him another invite and get him into the mix here. Maybe that's what's happening, or he is calling to say sorry, I can't make it. I'll find out either way as I talk to you. So as soon as Facebook comes up here, we'll give him an invite. But I really feel bad for Minnesota. That really might affect their year, because that guy's projections. If anybody knows anything about that running back, Abraham, what is his name? Ibrahim. He's a stud. He's a fifth-year senior, I think, because of COVID, and he's an NFL projection running back. So I hope that injury does not keep him from fulfilling his dream of being in the NFL and being a relevant running back in the NFL, because he's certainly. Let me see here. Randy won't let him copy and paste, so I sent him another link. Hopefully this one will work for him. We shall see, so we can get him in here. So, Stroud, I was had some fingernails on the carpet a little bit. He wasn't playing real great in the beginning. Bad throws, overthrows. I didn't expect him to be Justin Fields or anything. Fields, one of the few times I've ever seen a quarterback come in who's never really played a whole lot and just start throwing dimes. And that's what Fields did when he came in a couple years ago. Stroud didn't quite do that, but he did settle down and he made some nice throws. Now those guys are wide open. I'm not going to make things about the wide open guys, but good quarterbacks, sometimes good quarterbacks, even bad quarterbacks, they miss wide open guys, and it's a shame. So he was hitting wide open guys in the second half. Ohio State's offensive line is pretty good. That center was not the center that's supposed to start. Harry Miller was supposed to start, so they had a first-time starting center. And that's tough because center's the guy that kind of runs the offensive line and calls all the signals and stuff, so blocking scheme. So, a lot of young guys, a lot of getting some really good playing time. And on a good game, that was a Big Ten game up in Minnesota. Bad weather, so to speak, a little rain. It wasn't a blizzard or anything, but it was some rainy weather. So all in all, I'm happy with the way the Buckeyes played in the second half and won the game. They certainly got to clean a lot of things up if they want to, run through the Big Ten unscathed. It'll be interesting. We'll learn a lot about the Big Ten East when we see Wisconsin and Penn State tomorrow, which is another game we got right here. Wisconsin and Penn State. A lot of people are high on Penn State. Last year I don't really count what happened last year on a lot of teams because of COVID. So Wisconsin looked really good last year, and then they had some problems, COVID issues, and Penn State kind of didn't. They looked good later, but not as good earlier. They had lost that really ugly one to Indiana on that pylon dive. So I like James Franklin. I think he's a great coach. I think he'll have that team ready. Going into Wisconsin's tough. Camp Randall's a tough place to go. So who knows what's going to come out of that game. I know Randy says he can't. We'll let him copy and paste. I don't know why it's not. Let me try to get this one more time for my guy so he can hopefully get in here. Do it one more time here. Randy can see what happens. So hope we can get him in here because he's our Bama guy. So we got to talk to him. Anyway, so we're talking about Penn State, Wisconsin. Penn State, Wisconsin is a Big Ten rivals for sure. Penn State's really looking to try to get back to being relevant. Like they were just a couple years ago when they had been since about 2016 when they had a blocked field goal and finally beat Ohio State. And they've played Ohio State so tough, but Ohio State seems to always come out on top of them since that game. And they just can't quite get out of the East and get into the Big Ten championship game like they did in 2016. So, good team, should be a good game. I look for Wisconsin to do what they normally do under Paul Chryst, and that is control the line of scrimmage, pound the ball in your face, do a little play action with Mertz. Tough defense, and we'll see what players they have. I really don't know how good or how many seniors and all that stuff what they got, but it usually doesn't matter in Wisconsin because those guys just they get the kind of guys that they want to play in that style, and they do a good job. Ever since Barry Alvarez took over that program, they've pretty much have been the same team tough to beat, and with Russell Wilson, it was probably one of the few times they luckily opened things up a little bit. So it's a good game to watch tomorrow. I think it's on at noon on Fox. If you can catch that one, it's interesting to see where those teams are going to line up in the Big Ten. Another Big Ten matchup that's going to be interesting is Indiana. Now, Indiana was kind of considered the team that gave the Buckeyes the biggest problems outside of Alabama, obviously, but the biggest problem in the Big Ten. And they go on the road at Kinnick Stadium, and it's the first time that IU's played there since their coach has been with them. As a matter of fact, Tom Allen said it's the first time he's been in Kinnick Stadium. Everybody knows how Kinnick Stadium's guest locker room is painted pink and yellow, I believe. So it's just one of the psychological things they try to do to get your mind out of your game or whatever. It's kind of a funny thing, but And of course, they have after the first quarter wave to the children's hospital. That's becoming a nice tradition for them. Kirk Ferentz has been there, I think, since I was born. Not really. I don't know Hayden Fry was there, but they're much like Wisconsin. They recruit the guys that they want to play their schemes, and they pound and ground, and they play tough defense. It's awfully tough to get over the top of Iowa, but if you're really good at spreading things out and you got the studs to do it, that's where Iowa gets hurt a lot. They just don't have the setup to play that kind of D against that kind of offense, so that's usually what kills them in one way or another, other than having bad games. Everybody has bad games. So IU and Iowa, it's a hard game for Indiana to go in there and win. They've got Penix back. He's a stud quarterback, and they go as he goes. And they got Freifogel catching the ball, and he seems to catch everything that comes near him. I know he's hoping to go to the pros, so we'll see what Indiana can do against Iowa. If they can win that big road game, and it's a cross-divisional game for Indiana, that'll be a nice one for them. So, Ole Miss and Louisville, I think. Let me see. I want to say this is Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, I think it might be Monday night. That might be the Monday night game. Either way, it doesn't matter. I think is an interesting game because a lot of people are wondering what Lane Kiffin's team's going to look like now. He's been there a few years. He's got his guys in place. Louisville has the guy that used to run Appalachian State, if you didn't know that. So they're expected to be pretty good. And we know App State over the years has done a lot of great things, beating programs like the team up north. That's one of the greatest games I've ever seen played. But anyways, so it's going to be interesting to see a big ACC versus SEC matchup, what Louisville can do to Ole Miss. I'm personally, I'm going to take Ole Miss in this. I just think offense is going to just destroy the defense. I don't know how good Louisville's defense is. I don't think they expect it to be awesome. So with Lane Kiffin being able to do what he wants, calling the offensive plays, I think that's what's going to make the difference there. So I'm going to take Ole Miss on that. I don't do the points, but I just go straight up. So what we got over here. This is kind of an interesting game. Notre Dame, Notre Dame seems like, except for last year, because they were kind of part of the ACC being able to win the championship in the conference last year for 1 year only. Because of COVID, they're an independent in football, so they kind of are always in this genre where they can't afford to lose a game. They have to win every game. They lose one game, and they're almost considered out of it unless other teams start dropping one or two games, and depending on who you play and who you win and all that stuff. I mean, it's the water cooler talk every year. Florida State, really hard times ever since they've got pounded by Alabama and knocked out DeAndre Francois. I don't think they've been relevant since. But they do have the coach from Memphis that took Memphis to some really nice places in the American Conference, I think it was, the one with Cincinnati and UCF and all that. So I don't know if he's got enough guys in place yet to pull it off, but if he's a pretty decent coach, he might be able to make this somewhat of a game, maybe for a half or so. I know Notre Dame's book is gone, but they do got a nice running back, so it's just going to see what Brian Kelly can muster up. But typically Brian Kelly, he does a good job from year to year, so I expect them to be in it, and I expect them to win this game and probably even cover whatever the point spread is. I don't even know, but I think they'll cover. So I think I touched this game already. Yes, Ole Miss and all that. So what do we got over here? This is a nice looking game. I think a lot of people are calling for LSU to just pound UCLA. I'm not saying they're not going to, because I haven't seen LSU yet this year. Nobody has. with UCLA last week in Hawaii. I watched that game, and they, they put it to Hawaii, but I saw a lot of really bad defense on Hawaii's. And I'm not ripping Hawaii. I just, it's first game of the year. Hopefully they'll get better. But I saw some linebackers committing way too early. Cutback runner, the guy from Michigan, Charbonnet, he was just cutting back into holes that you could drive RVs through and not have a problem getting in the end zone. So bad defense. I don't know if UCLA is a Chip Kelly complete team yet, but we'll find out tomorrow for sure. I think LSU, just regardless of whether they're CFP material or not, that doesn't matter right now. A lot of people think they, for the year they here last year, and I know it was COVID, but basically what they lost coming off their championship season, which was one for the ages. That was I really would have loved to have seen Ohio State play that team, and it's not because I think they would have won. I think I wanted to see Burrow versus Fields, that kind of thing. Two Ohio State guys, blah blah blah. No big deal. Honestly, I don't think Ohio State would have won that game either. And it's just because I think LSU had it clicking. Burrow was the man, couldn't do anything wrong, and Joe Brady was just designing plays, and it was just a beautiful thing to watch all season. So. Is LSU back with that? They lost a ton, obviously to the NFL, and then they lost Joe Brady to the NFL. And COVID hit, so now we got full spring, full fall, back to full football. So we'll see if LSU can bounce back up and be a team. We'll look at some chats here. Sorry about that. There's Rainey saying, he can't get on. It says the video hasn't started yet. I just don't know why he's not on with me. That's a bummer, but. Technical difficulties, unfortunately. So I lost my things here with my overlays, but I'll get back to them as soon as I figure out where I'm at in this. But yeah, here we go. So yeah, sorry about that. Getting right here where we are. So we're talking about LSU. So I would like to see UCLA be better. I'm not saying anything about this particular game. We're rooting for really good teams to get better against. We have a lot more parity in college football, a lot more better games, than blowout city until you get to the CFP. And then usually the CFP has a couple blowouts and one good game, So, it's just if your team's the one blowing them out, you don't mind as much. But when you're on the other end of the blowout or you're just not in it at all, that's not nearly as fun. It really needs to be something, that's good for everybody. I wanted to say this. I know a lot of people are talking about the expansion and stuff, and will Notre Dame join a conference now that Texas and Oklahoma are going into the Big 12? Well, one of the thoughts was, yeah, maybe they will join a conference, but if they expand the CFP, there's no incentive for Notre Dame to join a conference because now they're going to have an easier time getting in. Not because they can't get in, because it's made so hard for them to get in because they don't play a championship game. They kind of hold that against them, in my opinion, which I don't think is right, because I think they play a really tougher schedule than most teams. They don't schedule the FCS teams, and they don't have the big-time cupcakes for the most part. They might have one, and that's usually something that wasn't scheduled as a cupcake. By the time they played them, they had some issues or whatever. But, I'm not a Notre Dame fan. I'm just calling it like it is. So anyways, they, Notre Dame really doesn't have an incentive to join any league if they expand the CFP. And a lot of people are like, oh, they don't need to expand. Go to 6 teams, go to 8 teams. And then some people are really like, we hate seeing the same teams in there. And I get that. And the proof is in the numbers, because here's some numbers I heard that a lot of people may not understand, or know, I should say, not understand, but know. The first year of the CFP, which of course was Alabama, Ohio State in the final in the Sugar Bowl. Ohio State beat Oregon in the championship game, and I think the 4 teams were Florida State with I think I got Randy. Hey, we're finally in. How you doing, buddy?
Doing okay. I've been trying to get in forever.
I don't know what's going on with all that, but at least you're finally here, so that's what matters more than anything. So I kept the crowd as long as I could to be entertained until you got in. So I don't know if you could hear or see anything I was talking about while you were getting in, but we can give you a chance to chime in. But right now I was literally talking about how a lot of people are, the whole expansion, 4 teams, 8 teams, leave it the way it is and all that. And one thing I was getting ready to say is that I heard this the other day, that the first year of the CFP with the Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State, Oregon 4, that final game had like a 30 million draw. It was an incredible number for that final game. And so the final game last year, which is Alabama and Ohio State, two blue blood teams, big time programs, the one they say draws all the money, they only drew 18 million. So it does tell you that people, it's not a national thing when you don't have enough teams in it that have somewhat of a chance, if you will, or seemingly a chance across the country. Then a lot of the country tunes out versus NFL, where it just seems like everybody's got a shot. They let so many teams in. So I can understand them wanting to expand. I think they will expand because it's money, and they're losing money on the number of people that are watching. So they want to expand to get more teams in, to get more interest in it. The bowl games are dying. Nobody really wants to play in them or watch them unless it's part of the championship. So, I personally think that's it's just going to go that way. Whether they go to 6 or 8, who knows? I think 12 is a little bit too much right now, just because other than down the road, it will eventually allow people teams to maybe get some more better recruiting, and that's really what needs to happen more than anything. Is some of these other schools just really need to ramp up their recruiting so they can start having better players on their teams and get more competition, and we get better games. So have you watched any football the last couple of days? Did you watch any tonight? What's going on?
Well, I seen that Virginia Tech upset North Carolina.
Oh yeah, I watched a little bit of that first half. They're calling it a big upset, but I expect Virginia Tech to play good at home, so I wasn't too terribly thinking that was an upset on that. It was a good game for Virginia Tech, though.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I know UC lost a good number of players on their offense. The production, like so many touchdowns and 4,000 yards of offense, went to the NFL. So it's tough to replace that, as we see a lot of times. Some teams can, and I think Ohio State last night showed a little bit of replacing players on both sides of the football in the first half and stuff. And everybody's. I wasn't really shocked at the way that game played out, because they got a really good offensive line and they got a great running back, and I feel bad for that kid if he tore his Achilles. It looked awful, and that's just a bummer for him because he's definitely an NFL running back. But you got that much production and then that much goes to the NFL. It is hard. And your coaches, that's what we talk about with Alabama. They lose coaches, they lose players. It's a whole new squad this year. Everybody expects them to be good, and I'm not saying they're not going to be good. We'll find out tomorrow. And it probably will, but you really don't know until they hit the field and they see how it goes. And I did see where De'Aaron King is really calling out Bama. He's predicting a major win and all that. I'm thinking, wow, that's a little bold for somebody that hasn't really done anything yet. So that's bulletin board material, as they would call it, in Alabama's locker room, no doubt.
Yeah, I don't know. And to be honest with you, I don't even know how true that is. You see so many things. I mean, I would be surprised that he actually really said that, but it's very regardless. Once it's out there, he might as well have said it. Whether he did or not. But everything's. Things are going to be pretty interesting. The teams that we're seeing right now. Even North Carolina with their quarterback, and I know he's a pretty good quarterback. Obviously, he was off tonight. Ohio State last night, possibly Alabama tomorrow. I just know that these are not the teams we're going to see 7, 8, 9 games from now.
Yeah, most of them should and probably will be much better. There's no doubt. Yeah. Just about every good team improves from the first game to down into the road. So if they want to be relevant, they got to improve. There's no doubt.
Yeah, they better improve, right?
Right. Yeah, I brought up a little bit of we haven't got into this game yet, so I think it's right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about it, since we kind of were talking about it. This game's a little odd to me, and it's just on the surface. If Alabama kills them, they're supposed to kill them, so to speak. And if they don't kill them, well, then that means to use back or whatever. To me, it's like Alabama's interesting. How they're going to look compared to last year, because it's a much different team, different quarterback, some different receivers, coordinators are gone, defensive players are gone. It's a new team. It's the same old script for Saban, reload and redo. So Saban has a great track record in these first games of the year. I think there's a stat I saw where a lot of these neutral site games between big programs, so to speak, that they've played, after they destroy that program in that game, that team goes on to have a horrible season. So I don't know that's going to happen this time or not. But you know, I mean, conventional wisdom, just based on what we talk about a lot of time, is recruiting. You're going to pick Alabama because they, on paper, they have much better players than they recruit. You know?
Right.
So the Eric King, in my opinion, just will have to have the game of his life to for them to blow him out, let alone win. Just because I just don't know if they got the horses around him for 4 quarters to hang with a team that's got the depth like Alabama does every year. You know, and I don't. You know, last I checked, they're still in the top 5 every year in recruiting. So it's not like Alabama lost and doesn't replace with likable, you know, guys. So there's no doubt there.
Right. Right. And, you know, I think that, I mean, you just can't continually lose coaches and then as many coaches as they lost. I mean, 11 coaches, that is just crazy. And, you know, and of course, a Heisman receiver, you know, a quarterback that went, you know, fairly early into the NFL. And, you know, I think that, you know, eventually this is going to catch up to them. I don't know how bad it'll be. I don't know if it'll happen tomorrow, later on in the year, maybe Florida, maybe Georgia. You know, if they get that far. I mean, they got some tough games. LSU. I mean,
Right.
I think they're going to be a huge
A&M.
improvement. Yeah,
Yeah.
A&M. Yeah, there's another one. So, you know, I doubt that they're going to go through the season undefeated. You know, the big thing would be is, you know, that whoever does beat them, that they just keep on going and winning out, and you know they can creep into those into the playoffs later on in the season, hopefully. But I really don't see out, you know, the Alabama that we seen last year, which was an absolute incredible team. Uh, just the players that they lost and the coaches, and it happens every year, every year, every year. But last year was such a major um, blow to them. Well, I mean, they literally lost almost everybody, almost every coach. I know a bunch of them went to Texas. You know, they followed the
Sark.
offensive coordinator. Yeah.
Yeah. Sark.
So, so you know, like I said, I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. King has a great game. You know, which I think he's probably capable of doing. Um, so Alabama's going to have a much tougher season. That's my personal opinion. Um, so I mean, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. See what they look like tomorrow. Heck, you know, I'll be happy as heck they come out and they go, oh my gosh, they're awesome.
Yeah, you know, one of the best things you can do for a young quarterback in traditional situations is give him a good running game, so you don't have to load him up. You know, we in the last few years, we've seen, you know, situations where the odds are defying that. You know, Clemson benches Kelly Bryant for Trevor Lawrence, and he runs table, wins the national championship in dramatic fashion. And he was a freshman. That's like that doesn't happen very often in college football.
Right.
And then Fields comes in after Haskins has an incredible year as a passer, not necessarily all the way because their defense was very bad that year, but and he ends up being, in my opinion, more accurate and better because he runs than
Yes.
Haskins right from the get go, you know. And then Tua goes down, and Mac Jones fills in nicely, and then comes out the next year and has his great year. Burrow switches schools, and the next year it's like, wow, quarterback play has gone off the charts. And then how long can this keep going before somebody misses on a quarterback, you know?
Right.
And then, like, you know, like quarterback rooms we talked about, like Ohio State's got a good, like, 3 or 4 quarterbacks that you just wonder if Stroud ends up being the guy that looks really good. You can start seeing some of these guys into the portal, I'm sure, just because they want to go somewhere where they can play. And that's just the way it's going to start looking for a lot of teams, unfortunately. So, you know, and one of Ohio State's, I think it was the fastest guy on the team last year, can't find room on the wide receiver in Ohio State, goes to the portal. He's in Bama now, so they got the fastest guy in Ohio State last year is in Alabama now, and so I look for him to probably catch some really nice deep balls because he's so fast. But so, anyways, yeah, it's going to be interesting tomorrow. You know, I don't know what to expect from the U other than De'Aaron King trying to do it all on his own, and that usually doesn't spell great against a team like Alabama or a team like any of the 5 or 6 best recruiting schools. It's hard to do a one-man show deal. So
Right.
I would be shocked beyond belief if Alabama got boat raced and there wasn't any injuries or anything like crazy fumbles, whatever.
Hmm.
I just don't see. I don't see that happening. So yeah, the other one I wanted to is this one here, and this,
Ooh.
yeah, this game. I think last year you and I talked a lot about how we just didn't have a whole lot of faith at A&M, and every week we kept picking them to lose, and every week they kept winning.
Hmm.
I feel like Georgia's a team that I might misfire on a lot this year because my wisdom tells me I want to take Clemson in this game. But they're both starting newer quarterbacks. Now JT Daniels got about 5 or 6 games under his belt last year, but I just don't know what to expect for the rest of them. But everybody's saying, hey, if this is the year for Georgia, if there is any better year to get it done with Kirby Smart's team, this is the year. So we're going to find out tomorrow. Now, Georgia goes out there and just, dominates Clemson. Doesn't have to blow them out, but they play great, dominate the game, hardly ever punt, and they win. Then we're talking, it should be pretty interesting because I don't think Alabama plays Georgia this year, so they won't play them until the SEC championship game. Isn't that correct?
Right, yeah, that's correct. They got Florida this year out on that side of the division, but yeah,
Right, right.
they wouldn't have Georgia unless those two teams met in the SEC championship game.
Right. You would on paper, as usually it happens, the SEC West looks a lot harder than the SEC East. So Georgia was almost have a what would look like an easier time getting to that game than Alabama would. Alabama's got to go through obviously A&M and LSU, and I even think Ole Miss could be an interesting game when they play them just because of the offense. With Lane
Yeah,
Kiffin.
they're a sleeper in the SEC. That they really are, and we've been hearing about Georgia the last couple of years, and it's kind of like we're waiting, and sooner or later. I mean, if you look at them, they are in the top three, literally in the top three recruiting over the last several years.
Yep.
So I mean, you got to believe sooner or later that that's got to pay off.
Oh yeah.
So
And
yeah,
the year
it's
they got beat in overtime by Tua, they went to they were the SEC champion, and they got to the championship game and went to overtime before they lost. So that was a heck of a chance they had right there, and that was a dogfight, one of the most classic games in the CFP for sure. Going down, and of course they were up, pretty substantially. And Alabama came back, switched quarterbacks, and boom. So and then into Jalen Hurts and welcome Tua. So yeah, but
yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's going
that
to
was.
be.
I'm sure Georgia's still kicking themselves over that one. I'm sure they feel like they should have won that game. I mean, at one point they had the game in hand,
Oh yeah.
and they just. I mean, that's the thing about well, in almost any sport, but college football. You let somebody hang around, look out. Never know what'll happen.
Oh yeah, you see it like I can't countless times. It's like, oh man, okay, we got the ball, we got the lead, everything looks great. Fumble, boom, touchdown. What happened? Everything just
Right.
on a dime. It changes. So yeah, momentum is huge in college football. So I think that's the night game tomorrow. Alabama's like an afternoon game. Is that correct? Tomorrow,
They're on at 3:30.
3:30, right? And this one's tomorrow night, I believe. So a lot of good football on tomorrow. I mentioned
Yep.
earlier Penn State and Wisconsin, kind of a
Hmm.
Big Ten, East versus West. See which team's gonna maybe solidify as they're kind of on the way back to being relevant in the Big Ten. Not that they're not relevant, but Wisconsin's been a little more relevant than Penn State has because Penn State just can't get over Ohio State, and Wisconsin doesn't have to worry about it because they're on the other side. IU and Iowa, Kinnick Stadium's a tough place to play. These aren't huge games, but they're big games in the Big Ten. And of course, and then LSU UCLA. You know, I expect LSU to go in and win this game. I just wonder how much Chip Kelly really has this team playing the way he wants with the horses. Or I know Hawaii bad defense. I watched a lot of that
Hmm.
game. There was the linebackers are committing way too early. That guy from Michigan, Charbonnet, was just cutting back on holes that you could have back walked into the end zone. So we're going to find out a lot about UCLA. I got a feeling we're going to find out that they're not as good as people were hoping they are. You know the worst thing about that? I watched that game was in Hawaii. It looked like it was a COVID game. There was about 15 people in the stands at
Yeah.
UCLA at the
Yeah.
Rose Bowl. I'm like, what? You can't
Yeah.
come
That's
out.
crazy.
So I think they're giving away the tickets to the students in this game just so they can fill the stands. That's that's bad, but that's the way it is, I guess. So
Yeah,
let me
yeah.
see.
Yeah, tomorrow's shaping up to really be a great day, and we're going to find out a lot. Um, I can't say that it's going to be signature thing on any of these teams as early as it is, but
Right.
it's going to tell us an awful lot just by what we see and what happens in those games to at least give us an idea of what we'll see moving forward.
Yeah, Ohio State's game they played was a big game for them, more or less because they have a lot of guys that are first timers and new. Then
Hmm.
they had guys that are out. Both starting corners didn't even play, so they had to go to a true freshman and another guy. So now their big non-conference game is next week against Oregon at the Horseshoe. So that'll be interesting based on what they did this week. Now we're looking to see, okay, can they improve going into next week, and so on and so forth. So how these games we're going to watch tomorrow pan out are going to show us, okay, now what do we can expect from some of these teams moving on. If
Hmm.
Alabama doesn't look as, and I don't expect them to be as dominant as they were last year. If they are, great, but last year was incredible. They just had studs
Incredible.
across
Yeah.
the board. You hope they're that way, but you don't know. And you just conventional wisdom would say, yeah, you're probably not going to be as good just because of what you lost and how younger guys are. And even though they're studs, 5 stars, that are coming in, they still take time for chemistry and all that. So you look at the schedule and like, boy, before they get to this game, they got to hopefully get things, in a better shape or whatever, depending on where they play.
Right.
So yeah, like I said, well, I think we both talked about how we think we know what's going to happen in just about every conference except for the SEC. It's just way too much competition, and especially with the big ones having newer guys, instead of a fifth year quarterback or something. So it's going
Hmm.
to be interesting for Alabama to try to maintain their dominance when you got LSU, A&M, Ole Miss all on that side, and then you overlook somebody like, uh, you know, um, what the guy loves to throw the ball 100 times again, Mississippi State, so the guy that used to be a Texas, I can't think of his name, but so very interesting. There's no doubt. So, again, tonight, I think right now, Michigan State is playing Northwestern. So there's
Yeah. Yeah.
and those are like two schools that are about the same place. They're
Hmm.
in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten, so they're fighting it out and stuff. So yeah, interesting. Did you hear or see anything about the news that's kind of trickling out that the Big 12 is going to start trying to expand?
Yeah, I've seen that. I don't know how that's what they're going to do or how that's going to work. Um, yeah, I mean it's going to have to come down. I mean everybody's going to have to do something to stay to stay competitive.
Right.
You can't have all the good teams in one conference, and then what do you got? Two or three other teams probably that are that are top. I don't know. I always say the top five or six. Being
Right.
being Ohio State, but throw Oklahoma into the SEC. They're usually one of the top five or six teams, and of course Alabama, and of course Georgia, and so
Yep.
yeah. These I don't know what's going to happen with how they're going to deal with that, and what the other conferences are going to do. Um, I guess it'll be interesting the way whatever happens.
Yeah, it's like I personally would like to see the Big 12 stay just because, from a traditional standpoint, you hate to see a conference just go into the toilet, And, from a financial standpoint, Texas leaving is hurting them and Oklahoma. I think Texas somehow is still the bigger draw just because of fan base.
Hmm.
Well, Oklahoma's right behind them. But when you look at it, Texas isn't rolling in with the greatest track record the last decade. Now they got Sark now, so in the next couple of years, unless they go early, I know there's rumors they might buy out and go early to the SEC before the 2025. You
Hmm.
know, trying to make themselves more relevant. Otherwise, it really gets harder for Texas to get to the CFP because now they're playing in the SEC instead of playing what a lot of people say are the cupcakes, so to speak, in the Big 12, which is not as tough as
Hmm.
the SEC is going to be. Oklahoma's going to be interesting because they seem to blow everybody out except SEC teams. So both of them are going to have to step up their game. And when you look at the expansion that we've seen back when the Big Ten pulled in Nebraska and of course Rutgers and Maryland, and then A&M and Missouri going to the SEC, and now most of those teams when they joined those conferences went in the wrong direction in the first so many years because they're moving up to bigger and tougher play. Nebraska for a couple of years had some decent games and not too bad seasons, never really vibrant, and then they just went in the tank, And so I saw a funny thing, Nebraska was, under investigation for illegal practices and all this stuff, and after last week's game, I saw a meme that said, the NCAA has dropped investigation because there's no way they've been practicing the way they play. So.
That was an ugly game actually.
Yeah.
The
They should have never lost that game, except that they just shot themselves in the foot so bad. And then that quarterback runs for a 70-something yard touchdown. But then that's it. It's Scott Frost. It's going to be really interesting if he makes it through the season in the next year. I mean, he might just because they love him so much. But man, that's going to be really interesting. He's going to have to win a lot of games and that was one of them he needed to win because they play Oklahoma in a couple weeks. I don't see him winning that game at all.
And going back to this conference thing, another thing that's going to be really interesting about that is, I mean, if in fact, let's just say, you have Oklahoma in there and they play Alabama and they play Georgia and, they all got to play each other. And then Clemson, this is just a what if,
Right.
Clemson and Ohio State and USC or whoever, they all get in the same division and then they got to play each other. So then we come to the playoffs and basically we're going to see a bunch of rematches.
Right.
Those are clearly right now. I mean, saying nothing else changes.
Right.
But of course, we hope that it does, and things get better. But if nothing else changes, those are still the top teams. Those are still the top teams that recruit the best. They get the best players. So I mean, Ohio State and Clemson play, and in the regular season, and then there's a heck of a good chance they're going to play each other again in the playoffs. And same thing with the SEC teams or, wherever the top teams end up. There's I made a comment the other day when they were talking about going around with people in the Ohio State game, and I was like, the cream's going to rise to the top.
Right.
And it's going to be the same thing with this conference thing and this playoff thing. So. I don't know that I just would like to see more playoff teams like now.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Joel Klatt, I know you're familiar with who he is on Fox. I saw a little video that he did talking about this whole alliance thing, and he was just basically saying, what can they do? Basically he was saying the SEC, you can't fault them for taking Texas and Oklahoma. Texas, Oklahoma apparently came to them. If they say no, that means they're going to go to somewhere else, and they'll say yeah, and then they'll lose them. And they're leveraging themselves for good TV contracts, and rightfully so. They got a ton of great teams that are playing great football. Football is what moves the needle. And so when the television contracts come up, they're going to be saying, hey, look at all these regular season games we have that are drawing huge people on TV ratings. So they're going to have that kind of leverage. So what this alliance should do is what Joel Klatt said is they should have the champion from each of these three leagues play the champions from the other three leagues. So you should see a Clemson and Ohio State and USC or Oregon, and then the second place teams play each other. They should do that early in the season, to make the season so they can say, hey, look, we got regular season games too that are relevant and draw big crowds, because instead of us playing, Vanderbilt or, somebody that's just worthless, play. And I agree with you. If they do that, it's not a strike if you lose that game, because you're playing one of the best teams. So best play the best, second play the seconds, third play the thirds, and make that more relevant. Now you got the SEC with relevant games. You got everybody else with relevant games. And I think that's going to grow the whole thing together, expand the playoffs to like 6 or 8 teams. I think 12 is a little bit too much. And I think that's a win-win for everybody. And but somehow the Big 12 has got to be part of something. I think them grabbing UC at least would be a great acquisition because I think Fickle's done a great job there. It's going to
He
improve his
has.
ability to recruit, and they got a great basketball program. So even I know basketball doesn't do it quite like football, but at least that's something. Now all of a sudden you're playing Kansas, you're playing, you know. Baylor, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Bob Huggins, all those football teams playing. There's some decent teams I think that can do some really nice stuff and
Iowa State.
just keep them in the mix. Yeah, Iowa State, keep them in the mix. So I'd really like to see them pull in a UC, a Houston. I'd go after BYU, and then if there's a way they could just say, hey, look, let's just roll out the carpet for Notre Dame. They get Notre Dame in that conference. I think they'd be back to be a really close to what they were before losing Texas, and not quite, but close. I don't know if Notre Dame would do it, but that would be the one thing they could do with those other schools is pull them in, and then all of a sudden they got some really nice teams. And I think that would be worth doing it to keep them in the mix, especially if you expand the playoffs. So now you're not always leaving one Power 5 out. That's one of the worst things about 4 teams in is one team is always getting left out. It's been nice water cooler talk, but I think it's been detrimental.
Oh yeah, yeah, it has.
Yeah. So, that would be nice to see all that happen. But you know what? Whatever I say, whatever you say, it's going to be something else. We all know that. I mean,
Oh yeah.
It's never what anybody thinks. It's always something nobody ever thought of. So,
Well, they should
so
listen to if they would listen to us, they would get it right.
exactly. I mean, we're calling it like it is. And
Exactly.
we're the fans. We're the ones on the couch watching it all. So we're the ones they want us to watch. We're in the demographic. So let's just let's dial it up. Let's get it done. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I think I covered all the games. Let me go roll through this. I know we talked about that a little bit. Oh yeah, Notre Dame, Florida State. I kind of brought this up. I think Notre Dame is probably going to win this game. I hope to see Florida State play a good game. The guy from Memphis, Norvell, hopefully he has that team a bunch better than they were a couple years ago, and he can at least be somewhat improved. If Notre Dame just destroys them, it's just kind of like, it's just another year. Florida State's got to wait till they get better and stuff. So I'm hoping they can play a good game. If they win, great, but I really don't think Notre Dame's got a chance in that game. So I think I'm just going through all the teams. I think we got them all. So yeah, there's a ton of really good, interesting games. A lot of matchups that are ranked for whatever that means. Rankings are, everybody. The one thing I love on that college frenzy, they're like, Ohio State's overrated. It's like the rankings are garbage anyways right now. So
Right.
it doesn't, and we haven't even seen everybody play once. A lot of people didn't think North Carolina was going to come out and lose to Virginia Tech. A lot of people did. I wasn't surprised. I'm not saying I picked them, but I'm just saying I'm not surprised. Virginia Tech's a tough team. They always used to play tough football. They're at home. It's a tough place to go in and win. So
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
good for them. Because hopefully they're going to be relevant in the ACC. So
Well, we both kind of thought that in the ACC that maybe they closed that gap a little bit, but maybe not. We'll
yeah,
find out this weekend because Florida State, Miami. I expected a little bit more out of North Carolina, but like you said, it wasn't a total shocker. Um,
right.
you know,
It,
but then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is here we have talking about the rankings and all that stuff, and everybody's here's the top 4, the top 5, whatever. Well, now you have Georgia and Clemson both in the top 4. Now they're going to play each other, and we've seen this happen, and we've seen it both ways, where whoever loses this game, you have 2 versus 3. I believe that's what it is, right? 2 versus 3.
yeah.
Anyways, okay, you have 2 versus 3. So one of those teams are going to lose, and what we've seen in the past, I've seen teams drop all the way to 8, 9, 10, 11. I've seen teams drop that far when they get beat by what experts are saying and all the polls are saying is one of the top 3 teams in the country.
Right.
But we've also seen, and I'm wondering what'll happen here. Which will it be? But we've also seen where those teams lose one of those games and they only drop a couple spots.
Right.
So,
Right.
probably in this case, because of who they are, I don't see them dropping more than maybe 3 or 4 spots. But like I said, we have seen them drop 6 or 7, spots, which I don't always think that's fair. But like you said, I mean, we don't. The poll is,
Yeah.
it.
I mean, there's I can't remember how many years ago it was. It was when Dan Mullen was still at Mississippi State, and they had Dak Prescott at Mississippi State. And good night, baby. Oh, and so Mississippi State wasn't even in the top 25 ranking, and in 5 weeks they were in the top five, based on I'm thinking, and they hadn't really played anybody. I don't take anything away from them, but it's not like they went out and beat Alabama, Clemson, Georgia in three or like something like, So to me, if Georgia and Clemson, unless one of the teams just flat out dominates the game, where regardless of the score, they were dominant, and usually if you're dominant, the score is going to be pretty lopsided. Then I don't think you should really drop. But I do think after about once you get in, I personally think they should do any rankings till October. You get 4 games in your belt, then I think they should look at who's scoring, who's stopping the run, who's
Right.
and that's where the rankings really should take an effect. And I don't care if you were number 2 from the get go. If you're not hanging where you should be, then you shouldn't be number 2 anymore. That's just the way it goes. But it usually doesn't go that way.
Right.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And who knows? It's kind of like the targeting call last night. Oh, that's target. It's not target. It's like, I look at it from a sense of a coach. Look, man, the coach says you play through the whistle, and the ref's always right. I don't hear anybody complaining about the calls. Just keep playing and let all that stuff work out. And usually it's on both sides, and sometimes
Right.
it's one or another and all that. And like most people said, that probably didn't have an effect on the score. It was what it was. They didn't call it. Blah blah blah. And most of the time, most players that are realists will say, "Hey, we had 5 other chances to score, we didn't. So that one thing right there ain't gonna change us." Stuff like that.
Well,
So,
the running back getting hurt is probably the biggest thing that changed in that game that could have
uh,
possibly made it a little closer.
I completely agree, and this is where the big recruiting separates itself from like Minnesota. Ohio State had 3 running backs they were running through there, and they all were doing really well. That running back for Minnesota was a stud, but the guy behind him is nowhere near as good, and
Right.
so it definitely affected that team's ability to play action. And then Ohio State was able to play a little more pass. Maybe I say Ohio State didn't defensively dominate that game after that running back left or nothing like that, but it was easier on them because that guy was killing them. There's no doubt about it. He had 167 yards, but he carried the ball 30 times, and it was only the
Yeah.
third
Yeah.
quarter.
Right. Yeah. He was. They were using him up.
Yeah,
And you're exactly right, and that's a lot about what we talked about. That's what we're seeing in the recruiting of the top 5 or 6 teams that I keep talking about, and that's the big difference right there. They're a little deeper. Somebody else may have a great running back. They say Oregon has a great defensive end, or I
right.
believe that. Yeah, they're going to have that one guy, 2 guys, but you're in the what's coming up with Oregon and Ohio State. I'll use that as an example. I think Oregon's going to have a couple of guys. They might have defensive player of the year, but Ohio State's is going to be deeper. And if anything was to happen, somebody get hurt, somebody go down, the guy that comes in for Ohio State is going to be much better than the guy that comes in for Oregon.
Right. Yeah. And exactly. And even Oregon back when Chip Kelly was there recruited a lot better. They really fall off the recruiting, so they really got
Mm-hmm.
ways to go to catch up. But you're absolutely right. Travion Henderson, the freshman who caught that 10-yard pass and took it to the house and was
Yeah.
never touched. It was a blown coverage too,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like it was supposed to be Master Teague. And then Mayan Williams and this Travion Henderson, they're going, oh, they're real hot on this guy. They're real hot on this guy. He's awesome. Well, Master Teague had 6 carries, and he's the guy who's been there for like 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, they just bigger, better, faster, stronger guys. Mayan Williams is a 3-star recruit. But he ran great last night. And then this little Travion Henderson guy, looked like Percy Harvin out there. I mean, he was like, I'm like, man, look how fast that guy is. So yeah, and that's if Minnesota had a guy right behind that dude when we went down that came in there and just started killing it, it could have been a different game. There's no doubt because they were in that game. There's no doubt about it when that guy got hurt, and I hated to see it. I felt so
Oh
bad for
yeah,
that kid. I went right on and typed in there on at College Frenzy. I said I think he just tore his Achilles, and I hope he didn't. But they
right.
still haven't come out and said what it was, but it sure looked like it. And that's tough. I mean, for two reasons: for him and for that team season. Week one, they lose their best player. That guy was by far their best. They got a lot of nice guys on that team, but that's an NFL dude right there. I don't know if that quarterback's going to go NFL and start. That guy would go to the NFL. There's no doubt about it. So,
Well, to be honest with you, that's what happens with some of these teams, and I don't want to call them lesser teams because they're not really lesser teams. I mean, they're good teams. It's
right.
just hard. It's just hard to keep up with the top teams that are pulling 4 and 5 stars. But what I was going to get at is some of those stars when they came in. We're probably a 3 star, or maybe not even that. I was what Baker Mayfield was like a walk on, right?
Oh yeah,
Is
at
that
two
so?
schools.
Yeah, so guys like that are the ones that you see. Maybe that running back for Minnesota, maybe this defensive end for Oregon. I'm not sure. They might have been a 5 star guy. I don't know, and I didn't look it up. But my feeling is that some of these guys that we see on some of these other teams, Iowa, Missouri, whoever it may be, this lesser, probably did not come in as a 4 or 5 star guy, but ended up by their junior or senior year being a 5 star guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And because a lot of that really goes to how well the coaches are developing the players. Once they're there, because you got to. PJ Fleck has been a great coach everywhere he's gone. When Minnesota gobbled him up, I thought, now I think they're going to probably put that team in the right direction. The guy before him, Jerry Kill, he's just triple option, run, 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 run. It's like the Army. It's just so hard to win so many games when that's all you do. You're predictable, and he wasn't recruiting, and they didn't really develop guys. So Fleck is all, and that was a well-coached team of non-5 star talent across the board.
Right.
Which is why they were playing with a lead and in that game for the first half into the third quarter. And a lot of times, let's say the guy didn't get injured, what happens sometimes is they run out of gas in the fourth quarter because they don't have guys coming in rotating as much as the big power teams do because
Right.
they got more recruits. So you get outlasted in the fourth quarter. Their guys are fresher because they've had time on. They've been going in and out where you guys have been playing the whole game. So you see that a lot. And if they last that long, it's because the coaches are doing a good job with less guys,
Right.
available to them. So
Yeah, and we've seen, I mean, we know that coaching makes a difference because we've seen that over and over again. But the other big thing with those guys now, you're bringing in a 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old maybe, and all of a sudden he's 21, 22-year-old, and I mean, a lot of guys develop later,
yeah,
um, later on in life. I've had. Coaching high school baseball for all these years, I've had a guy his senior year, come back 2 or 3 years later, and he's 3 inches taller, and bigger and stronger. And I'm like, what the heck happened to you? So
yeah.
that's another thing that you have with some of these guys is just the development of the person himself. And like I said, and like you said, the coaching thing, we know that makes a difference.
Oh yeah, I heard one. I think it was Colin Cowherd say one time. College football, it's all about the coach, and NFL, it's all about the players. and I think it
Well,
was a good because they're firing coaches left and right in the NFL, but in college, it's like Ohio State. Tressel goes down, Fickle takes over interim. They have a bad season. Urban Meyer comes in, 12-0. And that's
hmm
coaching. That's just pure coaching. He didn't have any of his players, but he knows how to coach, and he gets the right guys in there to do. And next thing you know, 3 years later, they win a national championship. Saban's been a master at it because he's lost more coaches than some schools have ever hired in their entire existence, and he keeps losing them, but he's got a pipeline where he keeps bringing other guys in. I think his offensive coordinator is O'Brien that used to coach at Penn State and then at the Texas. That's who's offensive coordinator right now, isn't it? Bill
Yes,
O'Brien?
yeah, he was. He was at Penn State. Then he was at with the Texans in the
Houston
NFL.
Texans. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he was at the
exactly.
Houston Texans in the NFL. So they had who'd they have? Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
So yeah, and he was at Penn State before that. And I, be honest with you, I don't know what Penn State's offense looked like at when he was there. But
Tell you the one good, cool thing, and I'm sure he did more than this for sure. But he was the one to replace Paterno at Penn State. When that whole debacle with Joe Paterno and the whole whatever went on with the coaching staff and the players from years ago and all that scandal,
yeah,
and they fired Paterno. Bill O'Brien came in and said, we're going to keep this team together. And one of the things he did was he put the names back on the jerseys, made it about the players. And because traditionally Penn State never has names on their jerseys. And then so
right,
many
right.
years later, I think Franklin came in and they took them back off because now it's more about the school. So, but he did a good job making that team, stay together, kept guys from wanting to transfer,
Right.
stay loyal to the school. And Penn State, they're one of the bigger brands that can get players in, and so they've done a nice job but it just seemed like every year Joe Pa, they just keep regurgitating the same people, not the same people, same type of people. They're always good, always good, always good. And they had a few hard times after he was gone, and Bill O'Brien held that ship together, and then he went on to the NFL. So. And I think he came from the Patriots. I think he was the Patriots as an offensive coordinator in the NFL before going to Penn State,
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. So,
I believe that's right. I believe
right.
that's
So,
right.
I think he can. I think he's a good mind. I don't think Saban would have grabbed him if he wasn't. So it'd be interesting to see if he can. Sarkisian, what he did and with the players he had, that was a magical year, man. He lit it up. There's no doubt. I mean, so
Well, that was kind of that was a perfect storm, really. I don't know. I mean, he is. I think he is a great offensive mind. I think
yep,
Lane Kiffin is a great offensive mind, but
yep.
I don't think it's very often that they get a possible, a Heisman Trophy candidate wide receiver, a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback, and a Heisman Trophy candidate running back, all in one shot.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's rare. Every once in a while you've seen it, but it's never. And they're having the type of seasons where they could all three go to New York. So,
hmm
uh, you know, I was happy for Devontae Adams and Smith, but honestly, I thought Mac Jones was the better player. But somebody had to throw that dude the ball. But no big deal. I
well,
think
a lot of Alabama people thought Najee Harris was.
it's. And I wouldn't I wouldn't find any of it, but I don't disagree. The weird
hmm
thing about college football right now is it just seems like the running backs just aren't as important anymore as they used to be. It used to be just big back, and now all of a sudden it's spread them out. So
Well,
quarterback,
yeah, and the like we talked about the offensive coordinators that are coming in with the spread, and and we talked about the rules against the defense. I mean, it just we talked about are we going to see another shutdown defense? I think we're going to see a lot of points scored this year.
I agree. If off the top of my head, until we see everybody once, I don't even know who I would pick to be. They'll probably have the best defense in football this year. It's tough when you got so many different conferences, so many different play. So it'll be interesting to see. A lot of it's going to look probably that a team in the SEC is going to be that way just because of the talent they're playing against. It's hard to say, well, somebody in the Big Ten, but they're not playing near as good at teams, blah blah blah. So Georgia is supposed to be across the board. So we'll see if they.
Clemson also.
Well,
We got
yeah,
an
yeah, you're
expert
right.
saying, "No, this is the best front seven. This is the best." Front
Yeah,
five. Whatever. So that. Well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow.
yeah. They said their front line's the best they've ever had. And was it 3 or 4 years ago? Three of those guys on the front line went in the NFL first round. So
Right.
we'll see if they're really better than those guys. Well, I don't know their names, but they were studs. So, all right, man. An hour in the books. You have any more you want to get off your chest after first 2 days? Are you glad college football is finally back, man? I'm happy as a pig in a pile of poop.
Oh yeah, yeah. Love college football, and tomorrow is going to be a huge day. Lots of big games. Really, you don't normally see this, at the beginning of the season like this. Most teams start off with lesser teams. You always have a couple of big games, but here we are with 5 or 6 big games, bam, right off the bat. So
Right.
that's really exciting.
And some pretty decent conference games already, which
Yeah.
even if they're not the blue bloods of the schools, like the Penn State, Wisconsin, they're not the top, but they're definitely in the second tier. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of those teams is going to get the jump on the other one.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then I think they got some more next week because the last so many years there's been a few in the SEC and the ACC that have started off with a conference game. Been Alabama. Of course, they're big on their non-conference, which is fine. It's a money draw. The money's good
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
everybody.
Yep.
But so it'll be yeah, a lot of some really really good. I'm really interested in seeing games tomorrow and then watching the recap and see what I missed. Because I was paying attention to something else. So a lot of big games tomorrow. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I actually, I have an interest in LSU UCLA just because of the hype that the media has gave this game in UCLA. I'm just kind of interested what's going to happen there.
Yeah, if there's based on what happened in Oregon years ago, if there's one guy, if he's got the players that can give you fits, it's Chip Kelly and his offense. I just don't know if he's got it in UCLA right now. We'll find out, and it'd be
Hmm.
interesting if he's able to make the game interesting at least for a little while, if not to the
Right.
fourth quarter. That'll be really interesting. So most people don't think it's going to happen, and I tend to agree. But it's until we see it. First game, you just don't know what LSU is going to look like. Or UCLA and Hawaii was just not a good enough test. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So who are you picking in the Georgia Clemson game?
Honestly, I'm going to take Clemson. I know he's a point spread or anything, but I just feel like Clemson is just going to have the better defense, and they just have they've been winning where Georgia is right there and not been getting over the hump. So, but that DJ Ugalele, if he
Yeah.
don't come out and light it up, and JT does, who knows? So, but either team can win. I really feel that way. If I have to pick, which you asked me, I'm picking Clemson.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Georgia in that one.
Cool, cool.
Yeah, I just
Also,
think, like I said, sooner or later, being in the top three recruiting, over the last 4 years has got to pay off for him at some point.
yeah, I don't disagree. And I think JT Daniels is going to have to be a big part of that.
Right. Yeah.
He's not you don't have to carry the team, but he's got to have you got to have a quarterback to win in college football. I mean
Got to.
that's what's happening right now in the last basically. It's been a while. I mean that years ago when the BCS, you could have anybody back there just managing the game because it was all defense and running game, and those days are over. It's all about quarterbacks and scoring points. So
Well,
and some
yeah. I
defense
mean,
and
yeah.
defense.
I mean, look at the last couple of games that we've seen. Going back to the Florida Oklahoma game when when Trask played, and I mean, he did not play well. Of course, it was not a good setup for him at all. But then
Yeah,
today, North Carolina, we got Howe. He played terrible. He threw 3 interceptions, and so the quarterback. If there's like you were saying, if there's one guy that's going to make a difference in a game, positive or negative, it's probably going to be the quarterback.
yeah, and that was running through my mind watching Ohio State's first quarter, first half yesterday, because Stroud kept overthrowing guys, and every time he overthrew a wide open receiver, I'm just thinking Justin Fields would have made that play. So I'm thinking,
Yeah,
but he turned it around. So yeah, that guy's got to have got to have a good game, on just about every team
right.
to give yourself a chance to win against decent or better teams. There's no doubt. So you can get away with that when you're playing Vanderbilt, but
Hmm.
I
Right.
use Vandy, as a whipping post. I don't mean to do that to them. Who should I do that to? I guess I'll say I want to say Purdue because we got beat by Purdue, so I can't really use them.
No, the last one I'll give you would be Penn State and Wisconsin.
Oh, it's for a pick?
Yeah,
I'm going with Penn State.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I think I like Wisconsin, but I think Penn State's just a little bit more dynamic.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's a neutral site game. I think that's at Wisconsin because it's a Big Ten game. So that's at Wisconsin. That's a tough road win. But I think Penn State's gonna get to Ohio State, which I think it's an earlier game this year, undefeated. I don't think they got a non-conference game that's big, if I'm not mistaken. So I think when they get to Ohio State, they'll be undefeated. Hopefully the Buckeyes will be undefeated, and it'll be a nice big game. But
Yeah, yeah,
we're ways away from that.
right. Gotcha.
Yeah. All right, man. Get to bed and get some good sleep, and get a big bag of something to crunch on and something to drink tomorrow about noon, and enjoy the football.
Well, depending on how that game's go, it'll be dependent on what I drink.
Exactly. Yeah. It's either lemonade or Mike's Hard Lemonade. So
Yeah, there you
one or the
go.
other. So. All right, we appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will do this next week, and hopefully we get the times a little more locked down. And I apologize, I forgot we had other thing, crazy weekend, but probably for the rest of September, we're going to be on Fridays, and then Saturdays once soccer's over, and where we belong at 9:00 in the morning. So until next time, we will catch you next week. So
Yep.
enjoy the football tomorrow, everybody.
Yeah.